So here we are, and the easiest thing for us to do is to turn to our competitors. Sometimes there's a problem with going to direct competitors, and it really depends on your customer niche. But some people don't really have direct competitors, or their competitors are so small that it's not yielding any results, or it's not giving much of a snapshot into what's going on and who they're targeting. And in this case, as you can imagine, this is a very targeted niche, and there isn't a whole lot of competition, and what is out there is very small. So the best way for me to get a demographic together is by targeting people that are targeting the same customers but are not necessarily competitors of mine. And so for me, it's about targeting people that are looking for affordable dental care. And there are a lot of companies out there that offer a service for, you've got discount dental plans, you've got discount dental insurance, you've got these big dental franchises, that can offer really low-cost dental implants. And they're all targeting these same people, a specific demographic that, as far as income, can't afford their local care, but don't maybe have insurance. And usually the insurance isn't sufficient anyways. So that's one way that you can actually use this information exactly in your campaigns. Let's say you have a offer for a Gucci bag. Well, probably somebody that buys a specific perfume may be doing that, is maybe buying the Gucci bag. And so although that might not be your competitor, they're targeting the same audience. And that was just off the top of my head. I'm sure that there are better examples than that. So you want to start looking at your competitors and creating target fields. And granted, I've been in the business a while, so I have a pretty good understanding of what's going on with my demographic. But like I said, it's always good to revisit it. But every time you learn something new. So actually, this is a really odd industry. And what will happen over time is that your perception evolves. And with each location, we have a different type of customer that I've found out. The person who gets on a jet and goes to Costa Rica, for example, which is one of our locations, is not the same person that's going to drive 3.5 hours and walk over the border and be home in time for dinner, just going to the border towns in Mexico, leaving from Phoenix or maybe California. So, you can really segment your audiences so you can get a big picture thing going, and you can segment it. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I segmented mine. So we have the biggest demographic, I'm just going to tell you, it's pretty split down the middle as far as gender. It's a little bit heavier on the female side, but it's almost down the middle. The majority of my clients are 45 to 65. However, I get clients that are in their 30s and I get clients over 65. So if I wanted to do a wide sweeping demographic, this is one of those things that everybody needs dental care. And also a lot of people, like say targeting diets, they have a difficult time getting a demographic together because it could be anything under the sun. It could be 16 to 60. And where do you target, or how do you target such a large group of people? And this is kind of the same situation, but I've started to narrow it down and just use common sense. Who needs serious dental care, and who doesn't really have other options? And it's usually people over 40 have the serious needs, and usually it's within a certain income. So I started breaking it down. So we have one, which is a demographic that's an absolutely necessity in need of serious care, usually between the ages of 45 and 65. And then the other one that I have is an older demographic, 65 and older, and usually they don't want to go through any surgery or have any major stuff done. They just want to have their dentures, and they don't want to go far for it, and so they're usually just in Arizona or something and cross the border. And then we have that last minute traveler that wants to tack on maybe a root canal or a teeth whitening. They're going to be in Cancun anyways on vacation, and they've been putting it off, and so might as well save while they're there. So that's how I started thinking about who I want to target with my paid campaigns. And for me, the most profitable is going to be the demographic between 45 and 65. So that's what I want to target my buys with, because this is how you start getting your strategies together, is by thinking very, common sense stuff. Okay, I know that this group is going to have the biggest need, so they're going to spend the most money. And since my model is based upon how much they spend, that's the group that's going to yield the biggest return. Whereas somebody that's 30 might not have a big need, or somebody in their 20s, they're not going to have full mouth restorations. So this is exactly what anybody can do with any campaign. It's limited, of course, depending on your niche, but just think, put yourself in their shoes and try to think, what is going to give you the best return. Not every single person that's a possible, customer or conversion. What's going to be the best conversion. So now I'm going to pull up something that I have here, and this is Matt and Mary, and this is who my demographic is, and we're going to start narrowing it down. So what I did was show you right here. Started thinking, who are my competitors? Like I said, I didn't want to go right after a direct competitor because they're very limited, the amount of data, there's not a lot of them. So I went discount dental. This is what you can do. Start looking around and find your big competitors, maybe not your direct competitors, but the people that are targeting your audience. And I see dental plans, One Dental, Cheap Dental, so I'm going to go here. I've been here before. And it's going to pull up, and affordable dental plans is exactly the sort of offer that I'm putting up on my website, except for mine's just in a different place as far as location. So let's go ahead and just pull this up, and let's look at some of their traffic information. Let's go to Quantcast. Actually, let's go to Ad Planner. That's the best one in my opinion, if we can get it. If it pulls up, doesn't always do that. Okay. So as you can see here, 45 to 54, and then this really drops down lower, and 35 to 44 is pretty heavily represented. Thing is that I already know from my past experience that my demographic is going to be 45 to 54 and then older, but most of it is 45 to 65, and this is a little bit different, and this is why you want to look at these not exactly like your direct competitors, because their services might be a little bit different. A 25 to 34 or 35 to 44-year-old might not get on a plane and go to Costa Rica for one root canal, but they might buy a dental plan to discount the rates. And so it's just really about using logic, and then using that logic to come up with this information. So as I'm looking here, some college. Now this is something that came up in my own research in the past. So I know that people with some college is part of my demographic, and I also know that between 25 and 74,000 is the income level. Now, one could just think up this part on their own. Okay, if somebody's making 75,000 or 100,000, why would they go to another country, to have their dental care done? That gives you some information that a lot of this is just using your brain and then using research to back it up. So as I'm seeing here, I'm starting to get a picture of what Matt and Mary look like. So I know that Matt and Mary are between 45 and 65. Most likely, since these numbers the heaviest, Matt and Mary are probably close to 50 to 55. But that might be a little too targeted for us. So they're, Matt is a male and Mary is a female. And they both make, probably around 50,000. So we'll go 25 to 75. Okay. And education, some college. Thinking of them as real people will help you think in terms of actual customers and not just looking at these charts and graphs and not really thinking like a marketer, thinking more like a mathematician, and that doesn't really always help. You want to be exact with your numbers, but you also want to be open to ideas and get creative, because if you're not thinking about these as actual people, you probably might have a little bit of difficulty evaluating them. So then categories of interest, and this goes into that human level too. Where would Matt and Mary be hanging out on the web? And Ad Planner is a good place to give us an idea because they have this audience interest. And I actually had a question the other day about this. Hey, I'm targeting a diet niche and I've been hitting all the websites as far as diet goes, but how do I scale out into other interests or categories with the same offer? How do I know what's going to work? And here is exactly the answer to that, because we get some idea about where this audience's interests also lie, and where certain sites that fall under these categories could be places that we'd want to put our ad. So we have, health insurance, credit lending, we have all this stuff. Obviously makes sense with the insurance stuff. But we can tag that in there, and now we have a demographic profile put together of Matt and Mary. This is our age, education, income, gender, and categories of interest. Alright, so let's go on to some other sites and see if we're going to get the right confirmation as far as our demographics. And we can go to sites also visited with the affinity score and go to those sites. So let's go with Dental for Everyone because it's got high affinity. Get a free quote. Okay, so this is all about price, so that's relevant. Let's take a look, see if anything pulls up for them. Okay, not really. So let's get out of here. Let's back out. And let's check them out, see if there's any Quantcast. Okay, so here we are. We're going to see the 35 to 44, 45 to 54, 55 to 64. So, 45 to 64, this is still showing me that I can hit these people too, because it's really, dental care, like I said, it can be applicable to everyone. But I know that 45 to 65 is best for me because they have the more serious needs. So I might get just as many patients doing this, but these patients have a higher need. I can help them more. Just so you know, everybody knows here, this is not all about profiting. I talk so exact about this because this is marketing, but I actually do care very much for all these people, and that's why we do so much to verify the safety. So, okay, so like I said, it's still a little bit on the female side. 0 to 50K, these are all converting some college. Okay, so we're still on. Let's go back and let's check out maybe Delta Dental, because that's, like I said, a big office, franchised office. Okay, so 45 to 54, then 35 to 44. So they're, we still are getting these younger demographic, but I think, you think about it, once you get into your 30s, that's when you start going to the dentist, because, things start happening. So there's a lot of them, but the ones where the real stuff's happening is here and then here. And this is just a little bit of thinking. And then, we still have the right income bracket here, 25 to 74. So we're getting, these are all our competitors targeting the same audience essentially. And let's do one more. This is what I did. Dental exchange. Okay, again, 45 to 54. And some college, same income. Okay, so I can confidently say that anywhere between 45 and 65, that's what's going to convert for us. And probably most likely, as we're seeing here, somewhere between 45 and 54 is going to be the really sweet spot. But as we get older, also, like I said, just because of my business modeling, I want to extend that demographic a little bit. So that's how I got our initial numbers together, and then we just start finding sites that are relevant to that. And then also when we go to our networks, we target using this information. Okay, so now we can turn our attention directly at our competitors' ad campaigns, where they're running, what ad format and copy they're using, and the demographic information of the best performing sources that they're targeting. And I'm not going to be able to go on what runs where or MixRank and show you this, because this is an instance of a direct competitor, and I want to avoid any possible legal issues or infringement on their own privacy. So, but I'll just talk about it. And it doesn't really matter, because as I continued to evaluate, I recognized that they were doing Google search for their advertising, and their highest performing ad was for a location called Algodones, which is at border town, and I operate in 5 locations, and one of them is a place called Algodones, and it's very popular for dental. Maybe you've never heard of it, or most likely you've never heard of it, but it's kind of like the Mecca. And so I started thinking, instead of just throwing out my offer, I started thinking about a new strategy that I could be selective not only in segmenting my demographic, but I could segment my offers within that group. So this would be the same as many online merchants. You could segment certain offers within your demographic that may respond better. So for me, in this instance, targeting Matt and Mary, who lived within a drive from Algodones locations, was going to convert better, first of all, because they don't have to get on a plane, and second, it was faster. So their time from their actual lead or submit to the actual appointment, that period was faster, which would allow me to replenish my campaigns much more faster. And although if I got down to geo-targeting very specific like this, my scalability would go down and be limited, it was a good starting point. And after that, we could limit our risk by putting the offer in front of the lowest hanging fruit, which is Matt and Mary living in Phoenix and surrounding states. And then later, as we optimized the campaign and saw that it worked, we could go on and start testing in other markets to see how they converted in comparison. Now, some people may respond with this thing about geo-targeting, that it won't work for them, especially like, if you just have a general online offer. But you may see that certain markets will respond better to your ads. So consistently, for example, I'm hearing from other marketers that places like Texas and California respond much better to certain offers than anywhere else that they put their ads up. So I don't really know exactly why that is. It just might be the culture in each state. And that's exactly what we're doing. So now that we have our demographic, we have ideas where the ads are running around the web. So now we're going to think about the goals of the marketing. And so my objective is to provide them with information, contact the doctor, nurture the lead, and then after a period of 11 days, if I haven't gotten a decision from them, I'll put them into a drip campaign to provide them with dental information. So those are my goals with the campaign, and in the next video I'm going to talk about some strategies that came to mind as I did my demographic research, which is a great thing even if you're already in business, because just doing this over again gave me some really good ideas about how I can approach this offer. Okay, see you in the next video.